For those of us who are not lucky enough to be able to leave our dahlias in the ground over winter, March and April is when it starts to get exciting, because not long now and the frost will be past, which means we can start thinking about starting our dahlias or waking our dahlia tubers up so that they've started growing and getting strong before we put them out into the garden. So for me, I do that in my greenhouse. It's not overly warm in here, but it's protective. So my dahlias are safe in here. They're not going to get frosted. They're not going to get too cold. It's fabulous. And I can put them in a nice sunny spot in the greenhouse and let them do their thing. I know for a lot of you guys, you don't have a greenhouse, so you might be starting your dahlias off on a warm windowsill in the house. But it is definitely exciting when we get to do this. So I'm going to take you through my whole process, and I'll tell you all about the dahlias and how all of this works, because this year is your year for dahlias. So let's start with the tubers that I overwintered. So these guys get dug up out of all the pots and the ground in my garden. They get dried off a little bit, and then, as you can see, they get stored in vermiculite in the attic, and it works a treat. So what we do now is called waking them up. Basically, what we're going to do is get them out of here, we're going to have a check over, and we're going to get them planted up. So let's do this, and I'll tell you about dahlias as I do it. So in here then, I have quite a large dahlia. This is one of my ones from the garden last year. Let's see. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check them over. So this is the first thing then. This is one of my glories. So I'm going to take it out, and as you can see, labels are a must. If you're doing this, labels, because they all look the same once they're cut back. I'm just going to go round now and I'm looking, and I can see it's looking okay. It smells okay. There's no sign of any mould or rot. Excellent, first step. Next thing I'm going to do is just check all of these tubers. They should all feel firm. Nothing should feel squishy. Anything that feels squishy, we're going to cut off, because if anything rots on here, it will spread, and we don't want that. Okay. Now I should only have one dahlia in this box, I think. Yep. For the first time dahlia growers then, let me explain to you what we have here. So this is the tuber, okay? So growing from seed, the first year you grow, when you plant it in the ground, it'll be a little plant. It'll look just like all the other little plants with its little root system. But as it grows over the year, it will develop these tubers. And that's what these kind of thick, knobbly parts at the bottom are, okay? These are how it stores its energy, if you like. These are little starch pouches, tuber, like a potato, okay? And that's where the plant stores all of its energy that it's going to use to be gorgeous, fabulous flowering plant for the coming year. On the top, you can see these hard stems that have been cut back, okay? These were last year's flowering stalks, and I've cut them back because we don't need those parts to overwinter. In fact, we don't want too much of that because we want to dry it out as much as possible. We don't want big green stems in there. So these hard vertical pieces, that's the stems. These little fat bulbous roots, if you like, those are the tubers. So that's what that is. So that's my glory. That's one. I'm going to put the label back on. Let's check the next one. There we go. Now this one is a Yankee Doodle Dandy. This is one of the ones that I grew from seed. And these are the very first type of dahlia I ever grew. These are the guys that made me fall in love with dahlias. So same again, let's get rid of this and we'll have a look. I'm struggling to move because I'm surrounded by boxes of dahlias and pots. Okay, same as before, we're going to check this over. So I'm going to go around and just make sure it all looks okay, nothing looks untoward. And just pressing all these tubers and making sure none of them are squishy. Now, there are some interesting things to show you here. So same as before, we've got the stalks and then we've got all the tubers. Now this is going to let me show you another part. This section here, where all these fat little tubers join just at the stalks, this is the crown of the plant, okay? So that's the main growing hub of the plant. And you'll see as the tubers come up, they get thinner as they get to the top, where they join. That really thin part at the top of the tuber is called the neck. Now, I've got one here that is just moving around far too much because that neck is broken. That is not good. That will rot. So I'm going to take that tuber off. It's dead easy. You don't have to worry about this stuff. All I'm doing is I'm going to get in there with my secateurs, and up as high as I can get near the crown, I'm just going to cut that off. Okay, because that will rot because it's broken. It's basically just plant matter that's not going to grow, so it will eventually rot. And I'm just going to keep doing that. Any I find that are a bit loose, they're coming off. See how easy this is? You don't have to worry at all. There we go. So yeah, I've got a couple of dahlias. Interestingly though, the label's at the top of this one and I can see it. So let's get this one out. Now, space is the issue. This one is labelled as Mystery Dahlia. I don't know if you can see. This was a dahlia that Farmer Gracie sent us, but it isn't what we ordered. However, we love it, and I haven't been able to find out what type of dahlia it is. So I've been really hoping this one survives. So let's have a look. That's that one. What else have I got in here then? Oh, this is quite a big one. This is another glory. Almost lost a label there. That wouldn't be good. Now these were big plants to start with. Oh. Don't know if you saw that. A tuber has fallen off, so we'll have a look and see if there's maybe a problem. Okay, this one is a dwarf dandy. So do you remember I mentioned my Yankee Doodle dandies? My dahlias that I was the first one I ever grew, started from seed. Well, this is a dwarf version of that one. So this is another big one. This is another glory. Much smaller one. This. This is one of my pygmies. It's red pygmy. So you can see they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. This is another of my pygmies. Now already I know there's an issue with those because they've dropped a few tubers. So these are the ones that I have stored over winter. Now there was one that I knew I had lost before I even stored these. And it was my fireworks dahlia, one of my favourite dahlias. So given that I knew I had lost it because I took it out of the ground and it was already quite soft and rotten, I thought it's a perfect opportunity to start from scratch with you guys. So, you may be in this situation. This may be your first year for dahlias and you've bought a tuber. So let's do this then. So it's exactly the same process as I've just gone through. This is a new fireworks tuber and this is going to be our dahlia grow along. So I got this from Farmer Gracie. If you haven't bought your dahlias yet, remember you get a discount if you use the code in the garden with Eli and Kate at checkout. And I will put the link in the description of the video for you to make sure don't go shopping if you're not going to get a discount. But you can see for a start it's much cleaner. So this has come to us, but it's the same process. I'm going to go through and check it. Now already this piece has snapped, but I'm going to double check that. And again, this one has snapped. Now this is the thing, because dahlias can be quite fragile. There's one tuber here I'm not happy about. It's not come off yet, but it feels like it possibly could. It's in an awkward place, so I'm going to get in there with my knife. And as long as you're careful that you don't accidentally cut any of the other tubers, then you'll be fine. So there we go. That's actually almost a good thing that this has happened because it lets you see that it's totally normal when this does happen. Okay, there we go. These are fine. Now, you might be tempted to keep these and try and grow from them. This tuber on its own won't grow anything. Tubers like this on their own won't grow. You need the section that's attached to the crown and you need it to have an eye, which is where it starts to sprout from. So there's no point in planting this or keeping it. But I noticed this piece has the crown attached. There's some small tubers, but I noticed that there are some eyes. So this potentially could grow. So I could end up with 2 plants. So we're going to try it and see. It's worth a try. So what we're going to do now then is we're going to start planting these up. Now my method for this is pots, and you can see I've got all sorts of different sizes of pots that I can do this with. Pot size, you don't need anything that's particularly big. So whatever size your tuber is, you only need the pot where that tuber will fit comfortably. So that's slightly small. There we go. That'll let you get a little bit of compost under the tuber and around the tuber. But you don't need them to be buried into massive pots. Remembering what I'm doing just now is I'm just waking these guys up in the greenhouse. The whole thing will get planted out into the garden once it warms up and gets a bit sunnier, and there's no chance of overnight frosts and cold snaps. So that one would fit nicely in that pot. So we'll start with this one then. That's my dandy. In terms of what I'm going to plant this into, doesn't need anything fancy. I've got my regular potting mix here that I use, or you could just put them straight into some compost. A bit damp, but not wet. I'm going to take this label off of this tuber. It's obviously the only place I could get it to attach. And it goes in with these stalks vertically up. And all we're doing is putting this in and a little bit of compost around. And you can keep giving it a bit of a wiggle, just so that the compost settles around the tuber. There we go. Now, I've just taken that label off, so I'm going to make sure to put a new label on it so that I know what it is when it grows. So, that's my dwarf dandy. One done. Right, I need bigger pots for these guys. Jeez, that's massive. Nice little ones. That's easy. And let's go with the smallest of these pots. So again, same as before, I can see where the stems are. Go. And that's fireworks. It's that easy. So I just need to find some big pots to get these ones in. These I'm going to put down here. So let me show you that. So as I said, my dahlias are in here being protected from the cold and potential frosts. At the moment, they don't need the sunshine because there's no little plants sprouting from the tubers yet. So they're down here where it's nice and safe and protected and a bit warmer than outside, and I'll keep an eye on them until these guys start to sprout. So at the moment they're in there. I've made sure that potting mix is nice and damp, and that's going to be all the moisture those little guys need for just now. Keep an eye on it. You don't want it to go completely dry, but also until these are actual growing plants, you don't want it to be too wet either, because if there's no way for the plant to use that moisture, you run the risk of those tubers rotting. So it's better to be cautious and err on the side of keeping it slightly drier than watering and making it properly wet. We just wait now. It's going to take a few weeks, but you will see little shoots start to develop and come out of the ground there, and that's when you know your dahlias have woken up. And then it's just a waiting game until it's warm enough to get them out in the garden. Can't wait for that one, and you know I'll keep you up to date. So I'll see you next time, folks. See ya!